Hi everybody, I'm Dan Fox. I'm the Commercial Director here at NCAS. The purpose of today's webinar is to think about alcohol licensing. We get asked loads of questions about it, so we thought we'd do a webinar to talk about it. I'm joined with me today by Chris. Hi Chris. Chris Nixon, I should say. Chris.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm from InConference. I just quickly apologise from the outset though. Over a loud 9-year-old appears. He's been warned to keep out of his way, but he hasn't been fed for about 20 minutes. So you may well make an appearance.
Don't worry. What's your background, Chris? What do you do for a job? Obviously, you're in alcohol licensing consultancy, which is why we brought you here today.
Yeah, so we have a family business. We've been going since around '96. We cover the whole of the UK, based up in Liverpool. My role predominantly is I'm on the road most days, doing personal license training. It might be to some of our corporate clients or to independents.
Yeah.
It keeps us busy.
Great. So I thought today's webinar, what we'd do is we've had lots of questions emailed in from members asking all about some quite intricate questions about how to get legal operating with their alcohol licenses. But I thought what we'd do today to start off with, Chris, is to think about the basics of licensing, the kind of stuff I presume that you talk about on your training courses that you deliver when you're delivering the personal licensing courses. So if we think about that first of all, and then we'll take the questions that have been emailed in. If anybody's watching live and you've got any questions that you'd like to put to Chris specifically about your business, then feel free to do so. You can write those in the comments or suggestions boxes on YouTube or Facebook, and we'll get through as many of those as we can. If we don't get through to them today, you can email them through to us. I believe the email address is opinions@ncas.org.uk, although I need to just check that because I'm trying to remember off the top of my head. And we can get them through to Chris. That's right, opinion@ncas.org.uk. It's going through now, and we can get those answered afterwards. So if you're watching live, put them through now. If you're watching afterwards, then you can always email through to us, and we can answer those as best as we can. So Chris, let's spend some time just thinking about the basics of alcohol licensing. So in order to sell alcohol, what licenses do I need?
Sure. So a very brief rundown, brief intro is the Licensing Act 2003, which is what we're operating under now, is underpinned and it's centered around 4 objectives. And if you ever do one of the training sessions or if you have done the exam in the past, you'll know that the whole thing is based around these 4 and you'll be sick of them by the end of it. So they are, just grab very quickly, prevention of crime and disorder, public safety, prevention of public nuisance, and the protection of children from harm. So they're the 4 things that you've got to look after. But then there's 4 other things, which are the licensable activities. So the sale of alcohol by retail, the provision of regulated entertainment, and the provision of late night refreshment. There is one other one, which is to do with club premises, which isn't relevant to what we're talking about today. So if you are wanting to sell alcohol or any of the other licensable activities, it needs to be covered by either a premises license or a temporary event notice.
Okay, so a premises license, you have to have a premises license or a temporary events notice to sell alcohol. That's what you're saying? So one of those 2 things.
Yeah. Correct. Yes.
But complicate it a little bit more. There's something called a personal license. Chris, what's a personal license?
Yeah. So ultimately, if you're going to get a premises license, under the old licensing regime, you were governed by set hours and whatnot, your name above the door, the old licensing system. Whereas now you start off with a complete blank canvas and you apply for whatever you want. So there's no set licensing hours anymore. But what you write about what you apply for has to be linked to the 4 licensing objectives, and you have to support them. Now, where the personal license comes in, you have to name one person who's going to be your designated premises supervisor. Now, you can only have one person, but it has to be a person. It can't be a company or a charity. Now, that person has to have a personal license. Right. And that's how it ties in. So it's a fancy name for a licensee, if you like, but take anywhere on the high street that sells alcohol, they'll have one personal license holder minimum who has been nominated to be put forward as their DPS for sure.
Okay, so just to recap then, very broad thing, what you're saying. In order to sell alcohol, I need to have a premises license and a personal license. Those two things.
Yes.
But a temporary events notice is what you're saying. That's a type of premises license. Am I right in saying that?
Yeah, so we kind of describe it as a mini version of a premises license. So if someone has a business whereby they're wanting to sell alcohol daily or often, they're going to need a premises license. But whereas if you have a mobile bar, or you're a catering company and you're going to different locations every other week, a mobile bar, for example, or a tuk-tuk, Prosecco tuk-tuk is one that we come across quite a lot.
Yeah.
Something along those lines.
Members, yeah.
Yeah. And you might issue a temporary event notice, then they're cheap. And then once that event, if you like, finishes, the notice lapses and dies. Whereas with the premises license, it continues. So it's all about whether you're going to be doing something in the same location all the time, or whether you're going to be moving about.
Okay, so let's come on to that a little bit. Let's park that idea of the premises license and the temporary events notice. So we'll come back to that. Let's explore this principle of the personal license first of all. Okay, so personal license. I'm right in saying that the personal license, it authorizes somebody to authorize the sale of alcohol. Is that right?
Yeah, this is where it gets a little bit confusing. So I won't go
the whole world
of
alcohol licenses seems a bit confusing, to be honest. Like some things you need, some things you don't. It's a bit of a minefield, really, isn't it? But yeah.
Yeah. And on everybody's premises license that allows for the selling of alcohol, there's a condition that says each sale is made or it's authorized by someone who holds a personal license.
Yeah.
So that doesn't necessarily mean that someone's got to be there all the time. If you own a shop or a little business or something, and you've got to work every hour there is. That's not the case, because the authorized bit ultimately means that if you do have someone who works on a Sunday or whatever, they can sell on your behalf, but they need to know that it's you that's authorized them to do it.
Yep. So are we saying then that you should or have to have a personal license in order to sell alcohol? Is that what we're saying?
Well, if you take a busy pub, for example, to be legal, all they need is one personal license holder who's been nominated to be the DPS, designated premises supervisor. And that's the bare minimum. But well-run businesses, you will normally find that there's maybe, a number of others in reserve from a due diligence point of view. So if you're the DPS and you have your day off or your week off or whatever, you can relax knowing that there's a personal license holder working there and they're authorizing on your behalf, rather than, when you're on your sun lounger in Spain, you're panicked as what's going on.
Okay, so what we're saying is, in order to sell alcohol, really you should have a personal license. I believe you don't have to if you're just doing a temporary events notice, but we can talk about that if you're just doing a few later on. But really, if you're going to be doing alcohol on a regular basis, you need to have a you need to have a personal license. Yeah,
which obviously the personal license on its own, doesn't really do much. I've got a personal license. I haven't used it for years. It's sat in the wallet. It's not linked to a licensed premises as such. It's the premises license that tells you what you can and can't do. But if that license lets you sell alcohol, there has to be somebody with a personal license linked to it.
Great. So how do I get a personal license, Chris? What do I need to do?
Okay, so this is relatively straightforward. This is one little bit though that does confuse people at the very start, but once you're over this, you're fine. Your personal license application is not linked to where you work. So your personal license application is made to the authority, your council, for example, for where you live, where you pay your council tax. If your premises is on the other side of the country, that's fine. They can still work together. But your personal is yours. You have to send in the application forms. There's a CRB, now called a DBS, just a basic disclosure.
The data barring.
Disclosure and barring service. You can do it online.
It's your criminal reference check, isn't it? It's your criminal reference check. Yeah,
that's it. There's a fee which goes to the authority. There's always a fee, sadly, of £37. Passport photos which need to be endorsed. But once kind of you've got all that together, the only thing that's then missing is your certificate it's the APLH, the Award for Personal License Holders. We do it as an online exam. We do it in a short session. Keep the numbers low. Some companies do it as a 1-day course, but ultimately you do an exam at the end of the session. You get your result, and then your certificate follows a few days later.
This is the dreaded personal license course and exam that lots of people talk about. Yeah. So traditionally, sorry, Chris.
No, go on after you, Dan. Sorry.
I was just going to say, traditionally, you have to go and do that face-to-face, don't you? It's been done as a classroom exam. And like, obviously, a lot of our training has gone online, but really that hasn't, the personal license hasn't gone online for a long time, has it? Because, am I right in saying that that's because it's actually a proper qualification, and therefore they need to prove that it's been done by the person that they're saying it's been done by? What's the situation there, Chris?
Yeah, so I suppose with licensing, it's been quite slow to be dragged into the modern era, really. We've been going since '96, and all our courses have always been 1-day courses. It's only been in the last kind of year or two that, rather than doing a 1-day course, you come and do a 2-hour revision session, do your exam, and we give iPads out, so you get an instant result. And if you fail it, you can do it straight away. So it's a lot more modern, but that's kind of been shelved for the time being as well because of COVID. So how the system's working now is, as long as you've got a laptop with a webcam on it or a desktop, we send you all the home study practice exams, and there's a presentation to look through. You do the exam online, and it records you. There's nobody watching it live. It's just to kind of make sure you haven't got the book on your lap, or all your family helping you out. But you get an instant result, and then so it saves having to go to a 1-day course.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's how we got in touch, isn't it, Chris? Members were coming to us and saying, where can I get my personal license during COVID? I need to change my business. I need to be able to add alcohol into it. I want to get my personal license. But of course, all the day courses aren't operating. So, we kept getting asked this question all the time. Where do I go? And so we got in contact, and you guys offer an online training course. Is that right, Chris? Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. So we were toying with the idea of doing, a webinar where people would have to come onto, but it would take all day to do, really, because there's a lot of content. So what we decided to do is put the onus on people to do a bit of self-study. So we send them an ebook. There is a presentation. It's a short presentation, but it covers everything. And there's a mock exam as well, and that's more than enough.
Yeah, and if you are thinking about getting your personal license, so what we've done with In Confidence, we've got a 20% discount for NCAS members. So how much is the course normally, Chris? How much does it cost?
So it's 125 plus the VAT, but if you wanted to add a second person to it, the second person is 75. It drops.
Of which NCAS members would get a 20% discount on that. Am I right in saying that?
That's right.
Yeah. So let's just clarify. So in order to get my personal license, First of all, I need to do the course and the exam. I can do that online. You then send me a certificate. Is that right? I get my certificate.
That's right. Yeah, we're authorised by the BII awarding body. We've been with them since '96. So they're turning around.
BII being the British Institute of Innkeeping, for just the acronyms that a lot of people don't know.
Yeah, and they get the certificates out pretty quick. We get them within a few days. One thing we're finding at the moment is that some of the authorities, because of COVID, are accepting the personal license applications online, which is saving a lot of time as well. So as soon as we've got the certificate, we'll take a quick scan of it for you and get it emailed over. So at least you can crack on with your application if you want to straight away.
I do my course, I've passed the exam, I get my certificate. I then take my certificate. I then, in the meantime, I have to do this DBS check, which costs about £30 or something like that. I can do one of those online, definitely, and then do this payment, fill out the application form, and send £37 to my local authority, to where I live. They then do some checks and send that back to me. Am I right on that?
Yeah. So how it works is you send your application to the authority for where you reside, as we mentioned before. If you are 18. And you haven't had a license taken off you or forfeited within the previous 5 years, and you haven't got any unspent relevant convictions, congratulations, license granted. There's no more to it.
So what do we clarify as a relevant conviction?
So within the Act, Schedule 4 of the Licensing Act has a list. It's pretty much everything you can think of, apart from driving offences. So, parking tickets, driving without insurance, for example. Drink driving is included within that. Now, how the process would work if you were to have one of those things, when your application lands at the desk of the authority, it's not a simple case of license rejected. It just means that it's then forwarded on to the police for your area. And if they decide that they want to object, they have a right to. But again, if they do object, it means there's a hearing called. So, you still get multiple opportunities to have a go at this, even if you've got something that you're worried about.
So realistically, what you're saying is, as long as I've not got any serious offences on there, and what would we constitute a serious offence, which is going to mean that you're not going to get your personal license, Chris?
Well, how it works is they don't base it on what you've done. It's based on what your punishment was.
Okay.
So currently, a fine would become spent, and there's nothing they can do about it after 12 months. So, for example, drink drive is the big one that we do come across. If someone's got a drink drive and they've got a fine for it, 12 months after you were sentenced, if you like, it's going to drop off from a licensing perspective.
So, personal license, I do those 4 things, send it off and get it. I've got my personal license come through. Right, brilliant. I'm actually only part of the way there now. I'm still not able to sell alcohol yet, am I? I then need a premises license that you talked about before, or a temporary events notice, right?
Correct. Yes.
Now there's 2 different types of premises licenses, just to use it a little bit more. On license and off license, is that right, Chris?
Yeah, almost. So there's only one premises license, but obviously you sculpt it what you want, basically. So we've got a number of premises license applications going through at the moment. Some of them are for places that want just on consumption. Some of them are for just off. And the difference between the two is obviously if you've got on your license, it means people are going to be sipping the pints or whatever on your premises. But if it's off,
basically,
or off, for example, it's where the word off license comes from. It means that you have to take it away. You can't drink it on the premises itself.
Yep. I probably shouldn't ask this question, but where I live, a lot of off licenses are called outdoors. Do you know why they're called outdoors?
Well,
I got no idea either. But but anyway, if anybody knows, tell me in the comment section. So on license, off license, it's the same application. How long does it take to get a premises license? Who should do it? How long does it take? How do I do it?
So the premises license is the one that's a little bit more confusing. There's a little bit more of the work that goes into it. So there's the day that it's lodged, it's put in for a 28-day consultation period. So if by, the 28th, the 29th day, if you've got outstanding objections, then there has to be a hearing to discuss them. So if we go back to the day one, you put your application in, and on day one, you have to put a blue notice on the premises itself.
Yeah.
This is where it gets a little bit messy and puts people off, because certainly for people who are maybe thinking about getting premises licenses for their homes, suddenly you've got your neighbours that are saying that you're doing something, and they're all over it. We've had a recent one where the local neighbourhood watch all got together to object to it, and one by one over the 28 days we managed to get them to withdraw once we spoke to them all. But if we'd got to the end of that process, then there would have been a hearing called in front. So
presumably this is because they're concerned about social disruption and noise and people being drunk at 11 o'clock and stumbling out of the premises and causing all sorts of problems. Is that right?
I mean, what you find with as soon as you mention the word alcohol to a lot of people, they immediately think that you're going to have hundreds of people turning up, but the applications that are on people's homes all the time tend to be for off. It might be delivering hampers, or it might be membership clubs and various things, so you've just got to put people's minds at rest that there aren't going to be delivery wagons turning up and people collecting deliveries at 2 o'clock in the morning,
So you still need to give 28 days notice, even if it's going to be an off premises license.
Sadly, yes. So it's the exact same process. So how it will work is the application goes in, your blue notice goes up. You've also got to put, I mean, this is how old school it is. You've still got to put a newspaper advertisement in the local press within the first 10 days. So that's a shame, really, because it does bump the price up a little bit.
So,
that's something to be wary of.
how much are we talking about to do the application?
So the application fee to your local council is based on the rateable value of your premises. So one thing to be careful of, if you're thinking about going into shared office space, if they haven't individually rate assessed each unit, then you're going to be paying the rateable value of the whole floor space or building.
Right.
So that's one thing to be careful of. But if you're going to get a premises license for your home, you pay the lowest fee, which is £100, I think it is, because you don't pay business rates, you pay council tax. So that is one of the benefits.
So what are we talking about? £100 up to what's the maximum you could be paying for a premises license?
A typical corner shop would be paying around about the £190 mark. We've done applications for big industrial units before, they might be looking at a couple of grand, but ultimately the thing that tends to be sometimes be more expensive is this newspaper notice. So a lot of the newspapers, once they realize that the licensing act required a tiny little newspaper advert, well, put it this way, they didn't lower the prices. So I mean, we've had it from £30 plus VAT up to 800, but on average, budget for around about £150.
And is it a complex thing? Is it something that somebody could do without having done an application before, or is it something that need a lot of help with?
Well,
I suppose I'm asking the wrong kind of question to you. It's your business model. You're incentivized to do it. But do you know what I mean? We've got lots of members who will be sat at home or operating from home even. Is it really? I've not done a premises license application. I've got a personal license, but I've never done a premises license application. Is it something that somebody with some nous about them can figure out how to do?
Yeah, so it's fiddly more than anything. And if your blue notice gets pulled down by a local neighbour and then the council go out and inspect it, then they make you start the 28 days again, but your newspaper notice has got the wrong dates on. You've got to start the whole thing again. It can just be a little bit messy at times. But in terms of the actual application, the 4 licensing objectives, which I'm not remember whether I mentioned them at the start: the prevention of crime and disorder, public safety, public nuisance, protecting children from harm. In your application, you have to write about those 4 things and what you're going to do to support them. So if you go on a night out to your favorite boozer on a Saturday night, and they might have a band on and they're having to close the windows, or they're closing the smoking area outside, or the football's on and they're making you drink out of polycarb, not glass. They're not being funny with you there. It's because they will be conditions linked to the premises license. So on the application, there's a gap. Well, they literally say to you, what are you going to do to prevent crime and disorder? And they expect you to put in what you're going to do. So if you just leave it blank or just put a very small amount of info there, they'll just throw it back at you, reject it. But likewise, if you put too much in there, you don't want to put all these conditions on you whereby suddenly you've agreed that you're going to have 5 doormen on a Saturday night, or so it's about getting the happy medium, really, because obviously you want it to go through without a hearing, but you don't want to make it too difficult for you long term.
Interesting, which is where the role of somebody who does lots of applications comes in. I mean, we're not here to sell you services, but how many clients do you have, Chris? How many people do you help?
We've got a lot of kind of corporate clients, so we do a lot of training for Iceland Foods, Costco, Booker. I noticed Booker were on your website as well. We do a little bit for Revolution bars, but the majority of the work that comes in tends to be from independents. And a lot of the people, certainly with COVID as well, we've noticed a lot of people that maybe are struggling a little bit, so they're wanting to add alcohol to an existing brand, or people that are just having new ideas and wanting to go into something else.
So we've talked about the premises license, the on license and the off license. So just before we move on, I want to talk about the temporary events notice in a moment. So just thinking about somebody who's got an on license, have already got an on license, and now they want to do some home deliveries. How is that an easy switch to make? I've already got something. Is that easy to do?
Yeah, it's not the most difficult, but it's also not the cheapest either. Right. So if the local authority deem that the changes that you want to make to an existing premises license are going to impact on the 4 licensing objectives, then you'll have to do a full variation, or otherwise referred to as a major variation. It's exactly the same as a brand new premises license application. The only difference is that if you lose that application, you'll just revert back to what was pre-existing. You won't lose what you already had. But sadly, blue notice, newspaper, plans of your premises, you've got to go through the whole 28 days again. So it's a pain, basically.
So what we're saying is the proper way to do all this is personal license, where I'm going to do my exam and the course, and I'm going to learn all about this. So doing the course, it actually does help you understand this a lot more, doesn't it? So it's not a case of you're going to have to do this fresh. You do get some understanding of how to do it. Get my personal license, but at the same time, I can then do my premises license application, presumably, or do I have to wait until I got my premises license to do that? Sorry, my personal
this is
license.
Actually another. So you can't operate under the, you can't operate a premises license if you sell alcohol. This is if you haven't got this designated premises supervisor.
So so I have to get my personal license first, and then I can apply for my premises license. Is that what you're saying?
Almost. So what will happen is we have a lot of people who, for example, I've got someone who's due to take their exam next week.
Yeah.
But we've already started their premises license application. So chances are with that person, the premises license will be granted before the personal license has been. So all that means is it will be granted, no problems, but they won't be allowed to operate with it until they've named this DPS.
Okay, so you can start your application, but you need to then have your personal license before you finish it and actually operate.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
perfect.
Absolutely.
Okay, so that's the really complicated thing, but then we've got this magical world, it almost feels, of this thing called the temporary events notice, doesn't it, which seems to do away with a lot of this bureaucracy and makes it a lot simpler. Tell us about the temporary events notice.
Yeah, so the temporary event notices are really popular with event companies, caterers. Going back to what I was saying before, we get a lot of inquiries about people who are wanting to do mobile, not mobile, but like delivery services, or perhaps new businesses. And we sometimes say to them, not that we're trying to do ourselves out of a sale, but don't go forward with a brand new premises license. Test your business model out with a few temporary event notices, and then see how the land lies, really. So ultimately, what a temporary event notice is a mini version of a premises license. Mobile bar company who have perhaps been instructed to go to somebody's premises that doesn't have a premises license. You would issue the temporary event notice, and then once your event has finished, the temporary event notice would die. But then you can move on to your next one. They're fairly straightforward.
Yep. So there's a lot of advantages to them, aren't they? They're a lot easier to get. So as I understand it, when it was brought in, the temporary events notice, the idea was to make it easier and reduce the barriers to people being able to sell alcohol, to make us a bit more European and continental. So it's easy to get. You can do the application online, can't you, through your local authority that you're going to be operating in?
Yeah. So the temporary event notice is how it's described is a light-hearted approach to licensing. So you don't have to go through, the notice, the plans, the newspaper advert. By all accounts, though, they can be rejected. There's no guarantee that you will get them, but they are a lot easier. They're a lot cheaper, and they're perfect for people who are going to be going to different locations. So I'll give you an example. If you have we have a number of clients who maybe they have a catering company whereby their clients and their events tend to be, there's never a cash bar. So it's the type of event and wedding that I would probably not get invited to. But these are events that have normally it's a package. So it's cost X amount for the food, for the drink. And that location where the company is based might have a premises license, because that's when the sale took place.
Yep.
And on the day, you're purely just giving it to,
Yep.
you're giving it to the customers, but the sale has already happened. But if
Yep.
it's a cash bar, you would need the temporary event notice.
Yeah, but there's some big restrictions to temporary event notices, aren't there, in terms of the number of people? You're limited to 499 people, aren't you? Is that right, Chris?
Yeah, that's right. So 499 people, is including staff, is the maximum amount of people that can be at the event. But one thing to bear in mind is it's at any one time. It's not over the course of your event. So if you, for example, were at a music festival and they wanted you to get your own temporary event notice, that would be okay. But if you had a marquee, for example, you might have to be, clicking people in.
Right. So 499 people allowed in at any one time. How long do they last for? Because they don't last, they're temporary, aren't they? They don't last for very long.
Yeah. So more often than not, your local pub, for example, they might use a 10 for a couple of hours because they want to show a late night boxing in Vegas. But a 10 can last 7 days.
So 7 days. There's number of restrictions on the number of 10s I can apply for. Is that right, Chris?
Yeah. So with a personal license, and this is one benefit to getting one, you're allowed 50 temporary event notices a year. But if you decide that you don't want to get a personal license, you can still do 5 a year.
So I can have a temporary events notice without having a personal license, is what you're telling me. So I can sell alcohol without having a personal license, but I can only have 5.
Sadly for us.
Yeah, but I can only have 5. But there's a restriction on the number in any one location, aren't they? So you couldn't have, just 50, 7 weeks, because 50 times 7 is basically the whole year, isn't it? So you couldn't have 50 in each location, which gets you the whole year round. Now, what's the maximum in one location?
Yeah. So what they say is you can do, a single premises can have 15 temporary event notices in a calendar year.
Right.
But again, going back to what you were saying there, they're not going to let you do 15 times 7. So what they say is you can do 15 in the same location, but they can't exceed 21 days.
21 days is the maximum in any one location in any calendar year.
Yes, or 15 notices. So whichever buffer you hit first, you're then done for the year, but they reset in January.
Right. So, and temporary events notice, they sound great. Lots of advantages to them. How much they cost, Chris, to get a temporary events notice, and how long does it take?
£21. That's all.
21 quid.
Yeah.
Pennies.
So, but obviously, if it's rejected, you don't get that back. But I mean, it's worth the risk. With the 21 quid.
But the likelihood of it getting rejected is pretty minimal, isn't it? Is what we're saying.
I mean, we've had plenty rejected over the years. I mean, we had one rejected a number of years back, and we decided not to fight this because we did it because the premises license application was in for the 28 days. The customer that we had wanted to trade immediately.
Yeah.
So using temporary event notices, we got them up and running so that they didn't have to wait for these 28 days, if you like.
Yeah.
Now, the police objected to the temporary event notice on the grounds of that they didn't have enough police in the area, which, we didn't agree with that. But at the same time, we didn't argue it because we also knew that the person who'd objected to it also had the premises license application on their desk. So we made the decision not to fight that one.
Yeah. We're going to move on, Chris, because we've got quite a lot of questions that come through. But I just want to summarize then the temporary events notice. It's maximum 499 people. I can get it. It lasts a maximum of 7 days. I'm just thinking, if I'm a mobile caterer and I'm traveling around doing lots of shows and events, if I get my personal license, I can do 50 different applications in lots of different locations. So it's great for me to be able to operate. That's probably the best way to be able to operate alcohol as a mobile caterer, isn't it? As a temporary events notice. But you do have to do these applications and pay your £21 fee every time you're doing it. Am I right in that?
And the thing to bear in mind is if you're going to a food and drink festival, or you're going to a local fete or whatever, the things to check are, does that site already have a premises license? Because if it does, then you wouldn't need to do a temporary event notice.
You can operate under their license. Is that right? Right, what we're saying?
Exactly. If it's a well-run event, because you've got to bear in mind, let's say that I run a massive music festival and I'm the DPS for that music festival. I've got all these people who are using my land and using my premises license, but I don't know any of them. So I would probably, although legally I don't have to, would insist that you have your own individual personal license to protect me if things go wrong.
Yep. Right. Thank you for that, Chris. Really, really helpful. Like I said, we've had lots of questions come in. We've got some from before. I'm going to fire these out at you, and I'm going to need you to be as quick as you can in responding back to them. Okay. So, had a member. She got her personal alcohol license 3 years ago. She's now applying for a premises license and being told that she needs to do a refresher course for her Challenge 25, but did not know where she'd get one. Is that right? Is that true that she has to do a refresher course for Challenge 25?
So there's no. As far as I know, there's no qualification as such. What you'll find is that if she's doing a brand new premises license application, it may be during this 28-day period, which is like a negotiation period. Maybe that is a condition that has been asked for by somebody. So it's not, there isn't a product out there which is refresher Challenge 25. It's just, it might be a condition in there that they're saying, we want you to do refresher training in-house for your own staff. That's what I imagine that probably is.
Okay.
We have a number of, they're like mini workbooks. They're only about 4 pages long, but they cover things like Challenge 25 or Challenge 21, who you can and can't serve, your powers of entry, what your rights are. But at the back, the staff member signs a disclaimer saying they've agreed it also. Just some, you can make your own, but something like that, just to protect your own license and protect yourself.
I've had quite a lot of people emailing saying that they're putting alcohol into their product. So it's not alcohol, it's not a drinks per se, but they're putting alcohol into maybe cakes, so pipettes, cooked and pipetting them in, or maybe we've got Coffee Bay saying that they're adding shots of alcohol into their coffees and stuff. What's the situation with that?
Okay, so if you sell cakes or any other confectionery, if it's got the alcohol already within the product, then the good news is that this is excluded as alcohol within the Act. However, if you sell cupcakes that have a separate pipette that is then being put in, or it might be in a gift set or whatever, that is licensable and that would fall under the Act, and you would need a personal license, premises license. And so
okay,
forth.
so if I'm doing cakes with it in, I don't need a license for it. I can just put alcohol. I can put a shot of vodka into my cake, bake it for 20 minutes, and job's good. I can sell that, and I don't need any kind of licensing for that.
Correct. Yeah, as long as it doesn't have the pipette with it.
Yeah. But Coffee Bay, they're putting shots of alcohol into their drinks. They would need presumably the premises license and then either presumably a temporary events notice.
Yeah, whichever way they wanted to do it. One thing I just wanted to pick up on, we may come on to this in a minute, but just very, very quickly, if someone is wanting to start something like a delivery service, because I would say that 1 in 10 phone calls at the moment is about delivery services. You may have a website, or you might be taking telephone orders Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. What you could do is issue a temporary event notice for Friday afternoon. With mail order and call centers or websites or whatever, the sale doesn't take place when your website took the order. The sale takes place when you picked the order and then dispatched it. So if you wanted to have a run at this and do some marketing, you could in effect issue a temporary event notice for 1 day a week, but that's your delivery day.
Right, interesting. That's really interesting because, I mean, a lot of members are doing that. They're operating from a set location. They might be operating at a festival, but obviously had to spin their business, and are now doing a home delivery service. So they can operate with a temporary events notice and do the deliveries at the weekend. Great, fantastic. What about a premises license for themselves for home? Is that hard to get a premises license at home if they want to do it on a maybe they've figured it out and this works, they've had a go with the temporary events notice and now want to get it going a bit more full time? I mean, sometimes people say, oh, it must be really hard to get a premises license on the house or apartment or wherever you live. It's easier in some senses, and then it's more difficult in others. Compare it to a 4-story nightclub. It's a hell of a lot easier, but it throws up other issues, and can't get around it. They are neighbours. So during this 28-day period, if the police object,
the police don't want to go to a hearing just as much as you don't or we don't. So they're open to negotiation. You've got to give and take a little bit. The issue is that with your neighbours, if they object, we find that they stubbornly will refuse to cooperate. And if we can't get rid of them, if you like, get them to withdraw their representation, then we're going to a hearing.
And
sadly,
is that costly? Is that presumably it takes time and money?
Yeah, I mean, hearings are free if you're obviously representing yourself. But you know, at the moment though, with the hearings, the turnaround of them is pretty good because they're all taking place on Zoom or Skype and the likes. You know, so it's
great.
They're much quicker.
Giving away free samples with alcohol in. Do I need licensing for that?
Nothing at all. The easiest way to kind of describe this, if you can put a pound sign in front of something that you're selling, you need a premises license or a temporary event notice. So samples, completely free. But if the sample is linked to something else, so I don't know, I'll give you a better example. If I go to a barber shop next week and there's a little fridge full of beers and they say, do you want a free beer? They're going to need a premises license to do that because it's not a free beer. I'm only being offered the beer because I've just bought a haircut, basically. But if they had a sign in the window that said free beer, everybody welcome, then they wouldn't because it's not linked to the purchase of anything. So,
right.
You know, another example might be, you know, £20 to go to a wedding fair, free glass of Prosecco on arrival. You'd need a premises license.
Right. That's really interesting. I didn't realize that. So following on from that a little bit more, so just thinking about what about if you're giving away, you're doing some market research and your way you tempt them in is giving away a free drink? Is that allowed?
Yeah, I mean,
I've actually got a member who asked this question. You see, that's why I'm asking.
Sure, as long as it's completely and utterly free and it's not linked to the purchase of anything else, then it's fine. You know, so if something was free, but then I decided not to buy whatever the product was, so that's okay.
Okay, great. Yeah, great.
But if you then made me buy what I drunk, then obviously that would be licensed.
What about like weddings, right? Where you're not buying the alcohol. So presumably at a wedding, if people are buying the alcohol on the day at a bar, you need a premises license, a personal license. Pretty straightforward. What about a wedding if the alcohol's already been purchased by, you know, by the people getting married? And so it's prepaid. And then when it gets there, it's an allowance, kind of like this is the booze that's on the table. Do I need a license for that?
So this goes back to what I was saying about the caterer right at the start, the event company. Sorry, if there has been a sale, although on the day in the hotel or the farmhouse or whatever, wherever the wedding is, the alcohol is just being given out. That's not a sale. The sale took place 2 weeks ago when, you know, you bought it from the catering company. So that catering company or event company will have a premises license for wherever they're operating from where they've dispatched the alcohol. But on the actual day, there's no license needed because it's only consumption. Consumption is not licensable. It's the sale that is. So the only issue this would flag up is that if it was a wedding whereby someone had put $5,000 or $10,000 behind the bar or whatever, you know, they bought a package of alcohol that was included within the food and everything. Yeah. But then they ran out. They couldn't then turn it into a cash bar because then there'd need to be a premises license or a temporary event notice. Right.
But they could do that. They wouldn't need a temporary events notice or a premises license if they bought it with the food earlier on, pre-bought, done.
Yes, but with the location or the company that would need a premises license.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
What about we're quickly running out of time? What about deliveries? You know, I want to deliver like an ice cream van, but for booze. What do I do for that?
Okay, so what you'll find, just really quickly on this, what you'll find is that the law in this part of the Act is very, very lenient. So if you ever did go for a premises license application, you should expect conditions to kind of block the law. What the law says currently is that you can deliver alcohol to somebody of any age, as long as it's the home or the workplace of the person who bought it. So for example, if you do a food delivery, Tesco's or whatever, chances are they'll leave it with your kid. But I know that, Amazon, for example, because they have their own drivers, they will
Yeah.
ID on the doorstep.
Yeah.
It all depends about what the premises license says.
Yeah.
In terms of what you were saying about the ice cream, sorry, just say that again. So if you have
an ice cream van, can I literally just drive around and, the idea, I think, with the ice cream van is, ring the bell, you stop, and somebody can come out and buy beer from you. Presumably, you can't do that.
If you could do that, I would be doing that. There's no way I'd be running up and down a country with my laptop, put it that way. But yeah, ultimately, you've got the same problem. You wouldn't be able to get a premises license or a temporary event notice for the ice cream van. You need it for the pitch, or location that you've stopped at. So that's why you don't see it, because if an ice cream van wanted to do that, in Liverpool, where I am, at the weekend, if the weather was nice, they'd have to issue 20 temporary event notices every time they want to stop.
So presumably the way around that would be that they get a temporary events notice on their home location, allow people to purchase through the website, and then on one particular day where they've got the temporary event notice for, they then do those deliveries out.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah. So, and that's the way for somebody who's operating a restaurant at the moment, maybe has a premises license, but want to do takeaway. That's the quick and easy way to be able to operate. The alternative is to then do the change of application to then get the off license part added onto their license. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't kind of need overcomplicating, really. If you look at Amazon, Tesco's, Asda, whoever, they've all got premises license that covers them for off. And when they deliver it to you, it's the same concept as you doing deliveries yourself, but you can't sell at the door. That's the key thing. That would be an unauthorized activity.
You're not allowed to sell at the door. It has to be done online, preferably, or over the phone. Even it could be done over the phone, just done at the registered address for the premises license or the temporary events notice.
Under the terms of that premises license.
Yep.
And obviously that premises license would have to cover them for off sales.
We've got couple more questions and we need to finish up because we've run over time now. So Giles Bradley's emailed in, messaging, I have a mobile catering trailer and no personal license. Just to confirm, he's saying I can only have 5 10s per year. That's right, isn't it? He's not got a personal license, so he can have 5 10s, but if he was to get a personal license, he can get up to 50. Am I right in saying that?
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah. That's right.
So he's asking the question, if they pitch up on the roadside to sell, you can't do that, unfortunately, unless you had a premises license. A temporary event notice.
Yeah, the thing is, if you start trying to get a temporary event notice on land that you're not entitled to, that's where it gets difficult. When this act first came out, when I was a lot younger, I had this idea that I'd be there with a Budweiser backpack at the end of every fun run or party or whatever, but it just doesn't work like that because they just get rejected.
Yep. Chris, thanks very much. We've covered a lot of stuff here. I appreciate for those people that are viewing live or for those people that are viewing afterwards. You've probably got more questions. Apologies if we haven't been able to get through to them all in this webinar. Any more, email them through to opinion@ncas.org.uk and we can forward those on to Chris. Or obviously you can contact Chris directly. Chris's organisation is called In Confidence, so that's INN confidence.co.uk. Chris, as we've already talked about, helps members, helps everybody who's looking to get alcohol licensing up and running and can provide services for that. If you're looking to do the personal license, and it sounds like if you're serious about it, then you really should be doing getting a personal license. We've got this great deal for members, 20% off doing the personal license course online. So it's how much did you say? £125 plus VAT for the first person, but you get 20% off that. So great deal. How do they get that, Chris? They use the discount code when doing it online. Is that right?
Yeah, on the checkout, if they put in the discount, put in the code, it'll take it off on the checkout, and then they'll get an automated email with an ebook, link to the presentation, link to the mock exam, and then you'll email us your ID, tell us when you want to do the exam, and we'll get you set up. It comes with a free resit, but no one will need that. But
you can also help them if they want to do any changes to their applications or their premises license as well, Chris, presumably.
No problems. If anyone's got any questions, just give us a shout. We're always here.
Great, thanks very much. If you found this useful, which we really hope you do, then please make sure you subscribe on YouTube, subscribe to the NCAS videos channel, so you get notified when we're going to be doing future events like this online. If you're watching on Facebook, then please like us on Facebook, so it's like NCAS, so you're going to get notified as well. Yeah, once again, hope you found this useful. We're going to be doing we are doing these on a regular basis, so stay tuned for any other things. So yeah, if there's any other webinars that you'd like us to cover, any other topics, then please let us know. Great. Thanks, Chris, again. Thanks a lot.
Cheers. Thanks.
Bye-bye.